In your Canvas module, there is a link to this handout of the color wheel. But if you don't have a printer at home, I'm going to explain to you how you can create your own color wheel so that the color sections are evenly spaced out, which is important when it comes to identifying colors and color sets and terminology in the color wheel. So I am going to be using a 9 by 12 piece of sketchbook paper. I will also need a compass. I will need a ruler, and of course I need my pencil. I will need later on a smaller circle, and we'll talk about that in a bit. My first step is I need to create a square on this sheet of 9 by 12 paper. So since it measures 9 inches across and 12 inches tall when it's in portrait view, the largest square I can make is of course 9 inches. So since this direction already measures 9 inches, there's nothing I can do here. So I'm going to turn my paper into landscape view, and I'm going to measure out 9 inches from the left edge over to the right. So when we measure, you want to start at the bottom of your paper. You want to line up the 0 of your ruler to the left edge of your paper. And since I need a 9-inch section, I'm going to come down here to 9 inches and make a small mark above 9 inches. I'm then going to move the ruler to the top of my paper. So when you're trying to draw and create straight lines, you don't want to move your paper. You don't want to turn it around. You want to move your ruler along the paper. So on the left side, I'm lining up the 0 of my ruler to the left edge. And I'm once again finding my 9-inch mark and making a small mark. Notice my marks are not very large. I just need enough of a little dot so I can line up my ruler. So I'm now going to take my ruler and line up that top mark to the bottom mark. And from the very edge of the paper all the way down and off the edge of the paper, I'm going to create a line. So that now gives me my 9 inches of space. My next step to create the color wheel is I need to find the center of this paper. Well, not the paper, I should say, the center of this square. So I'm going to once again measure. I'm going to place the 0 of my ruler on the left edge of my paper, and I want to divide 9 inches in half, which is 4.5. So at the 4.5-inch mark, I'm going to make a little mark. And once again, I'm going to move my ruler to the top, line the 0 of my ruler to the left edge, find 4.5, and once again, make a mark. Now that I have those two marks, I'm going to line them up. And again, from edge to edge of paper, I'm going to draw a line. So now that I have my 9-inch square divided in half this way, I need to divide it in half this way. So I'm going to turn my paper back into portrait view, and I am going to start near the bottom of my 9-inch square and lining the 0 of my ruler up to the left edge. I'm going to again find the halfway mark for 9 inches, which is 4.5, and make a mark at 4.5 at the bottom. Move my ruler to the top of my paper. Once again, line the 0 of the ruler up to the left edge of the paper and make a mark at 4.5. Then I'm going to take that top mark, line it up to my bottom mark, and from the top edge of the paper down to my pencil line, I'm going to draw a line. So now I have my square divided into 4 quadrants. This now gives me the center of my 9-inch square. So my next step is I want to draw a circle that reaches as far out to the edges of this square as possible. So this is where I'm going to use the compass. So for my compass, this little area in the middle of this white circle is the center of any circle I make. You may have the compasses that have kind of like the little metal point and the other leg with the pencil spreads out. So you'll want to put that metal point on that crossover, and once you have it there in the middle, you want to see which part of your compass, how far out can you go. So I am going to go with this hole. And I'm going to draw my circle. Now that I have this large circle, our color wheel we are going to work with is a 12 color wheel. So I need 12 spaces for my colors. Right now, I only have 4 equal spaces. So I need to divide each of these sections up into 3s. And this is how you do that, because we want these equal. We're going to go back to measuring, and we're going to be working again with the square. So at the top of my paper, I'm going to line up the 0 of my ruler to the left side. And what I need to do is divide this quadrant in half. So half of 4 1/2 is 2 1/4. And I need the same thing for this quadrant. So 4 1/2 plus 2 1/4 is 6 3/4. So I made 2 marks at the top, one at 2 1/4, one at 6 3/4. Going to do the same thing at the bottom of my square. Once again, lining the 0 to the left edge of the paper. I'm going to once again divide this quadrant in half. So half of 4 1/2 is 2 1/4. And this quadrant needs that 2 1/4 mark. So 4 1/2 plus 2 1/4 is 6 3/4. So now that I have those marks, I'm going to line up the top mark to the bottom mark here on the left side. And instead of going all the way through my circle, I'm just going to go from the top edge of my paper to the outer edge of my circle. And then down here from my pencil line up to the outer edge of my circle, I'm going to create 2 little lines. And I'm going to label this line at the top 1. And I'm going to label this line at the bottom 6. Going to come over here to the right side of my circle, and once again line the top mark to my bottom mark, and again I'm going to go from the top edge of my paper to the outer edge of my circle, and I'm going to go from the bottom line of my square to the outer edge of my circle. And this line is going to be 2, and this line is going to be 5. Now that I have those marks, my next step is to turn my paper into landscape view again. And I'm going to take my ruler along the top, because now I need to divide my quadrants in half in this direction. So I'm going to put the 0 once again on the left edge of my paper. I need the halfway point for this quadrant, so the quadrant measures 4.5. We already know that that is 2 1/4. And this quadrant measures 4.5, and we know that that is a 2 1/4 halfway mark. So 4.5 plus 2 1/4 is 6 3/4. Going to move my ruler to the bottom of my paper and repeat the process. Line up my 0 of my ruler to the left edge, mark at 2 1/4 and at 6 3/4. And I'm repeating the process we just went through. I'm going to line up on the left side here, that top mark to the bottom mark, and from the outer edge of my paper to the outer edge of my circle, I'm going to draw a small line. And down here from the outer edge of my paper to the outer edge of my circle, I'm going to draw another small line. This one is going to be 3, and this one over here is going to be 8. That leaves 2 marks that I had to line up. And once again, from the outer edge of my paper to my circle, I'm going to draw a line. And from the outer edge of my paper to the outer edge of my circle, another line at the bottom. And this is line 4 here and line 7. So when I turn it back into portrait view, this is what I have. I have 8 small lines starting with the top line in the left quadrant and working clockwise. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So these marks are going to help us divide up our 4 quadrants of the circle into 3 pieces. So we'll end up with our 12 sections for our color wheel. This is how that happens. I'm going to take where line 1 meets the outer edge of my circle, and through the center I'm going to connect my ruler to line 5 where it meets the outer edge of the circle. And inside my circle I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to do the same thing with line 2 where it meets the outer edge of the circle, through the center to line 6 where it meets the outer edge of the circle. I'm going to connect those with the ruler. And there's my next line. I'm going to continue to work my way around the circle. So line 3 where it meets the outer edge of the circle, through the center to line 7 where it meets the outer edge of the circle. I'm going to line that up with my ruler. And draw a line in my circle. So that leaves 2 lines that had to be connected through the center, and that is line 4 and line 8. So once again, the same process, where line 4 touches the outer edge of my circle, through the center, to where line 8 touches the outer edge of the circle. I'll use my ruler to line those up, and draw a line inside my circle. So now that I have this, I need to create some smaller areas in which I will then color parts of my color wheel according to those directions. And that is in another part of this module. So as I mentioned before, I'm going to trace a circle. I could use my compass, but I find it's just easier to find a small circle. So I'm using the lid to a spice jar. And I'm going to start up at the top here where it would be the 12 o'clock position on a clock. And I'm going to turn this so I can see where my outer edge of my circle is. I'm going to line up my cap to the outer edge of my circle, and I want to try, without having to measure, to get it about split down the middle of the cap with that line. Once I feel I'm pretty close, I'm going to trace around my spice jar lid to create a circle. I'm going to skip every other line and make circles in the exact same spot every other line. So I'm going to skip line 2. I'm coming to line 3. Once again, I'm lining up the spice cap to the outer edge of my big circle. I'm trying to get as close as I can the spice cap through that so that the line goes through the center of it, and trace. I'm going to skip this line, move down here to line 4 and do the same thing. I'm going to skip this line, come to this bottom line, and once again line up my circle and trace it. I'm going to skip this line and go to line 7. Same process. Line up my spice cap on that line, touching the outer edge of my large circle, and trace it. Skip this line, and for this round, the last one I'm going to trace over with this circle is line 8. Now that I have those 6 circles, I need to put circles on these lines without any circles. So I could go for a cap or a circle template at home that is slightly smaller. I can use the exact same one, and on this size paper it looks like it will fit directly in there. So I'm going to trace this onto here, but I want a little bit of movement on here. I might as well make this decorative. So I'm going to come around my circle on these lines, and I'm going to measure in about 1 inch and just put a little dot on each of these lines. You don't have to get so fancy with yours, but I figure I might as well make it aesthetically pleasing. So as I work my way around, I'm lining up the 0 of my ruler to the outer edge of my circle, and along this line that has no circle on it yet, I'm just making a little mark at the 1 inch. Now, as I said, this does fit in between, so I could just do the same process. I could put my cap to the outer edge of the circle. I could line it up on this line so it's evenly spaced between these 2 circles and my line. But what I'm going to do is that little 1 inch mark I made, I'm going to line up my cap to that 1 inch mark. And then I'm going to try to evenly space it between those other 2 circles and trace. This just to add a little bit of interest to the look of my color wheel. So once again, there's my little 1 inch mark. Going to put my cap edge on that 1 inch mark. I'm going to space out the cap between these circles, and once again trace. And I'm going to do that all the way around here. Line up my cap to that 1-inch mark. Try to evenly space it between these two circles and draw a circle. And it's also going to depend on the size of the circle you use for this. One I made earlier, the cap I used didn't fit directly in the middle between these like this one would. So that's why for this one I decided to make this movement, because I really like the look of the circles to the outside and the circles to the inside. But again, if your circles will all fit together without overlapping around the outer edge, then you can do that. Our goal is at the end here that we have 12 circles on our 12 lines. So there's my 12 circles on my 12 lines. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and erase the straight lines inside of my circles. And once I have these straight lines inside of my smaller circles erased, I am now going to be ready to go on to the part of the module that talks about how we place colors on the color wheel and complete my color wheel with color.